Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. We got Jason McCarthy here. Thank you for being on here, brother. It's gonna be awesome. Now, while I am excited about that, y'all should be excited as well. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff to get your emails in the morning whenever we go live, which is of course every day. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means put them up in the comment section. We will engage those directly, kind of like this one. Good morning, all. Good morning, Salty. Good to see you. Today, we're going to be going into the silent killer. But before we do that, Jason, why don't you give us a quick 10 to 15 second who are you, where you come from, all that good stuff.
Coming to you live from the Champagne Room at GoRuck headquarters in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Joined brief bio. I was in the Army from 2003 to 2008. Was in Special Forces, 10th Special Forces Group, to be more specific, and got out and started a company called GoRuck with my wife, Emily, who y'all recently had on. She was in the CIA, I was in the Army, and we were, looking to keep it not boring. So we've been doing that since 2008, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of mission, a lot of purpose, which is great.
Outstanding. It's interesting you say that. The when we had Emily on here, she actually said, "Oh, usually people ask me to see if we can get her husband on," and I was like, "Yeah, we don't need to talk to him till later. We'll talk to you first." And worked out pretty
I
well,
didn't say that.
That's how I
Chance
do
said
my
that.
best work anyway.
right? So I do want to quick little hit here. Salty jumps back in and he says, "Go Ruck has been a major lead for change that I've made in myself. So thank you." Boom. There we go. Getting started early. Now, when I was looking up what the silent killer is, there's lots of different ways we can go into this before, and I didn't really know how to define it because there's so many different ways to look at it. You could look at it as just depression. You could look at it as mental health in general. There's high blood pressure is listed as a silent killer, but there's lots of ways to dive into it. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on it in a second. But the definition of it is a disease that has no obvious symptoms or indications. And the reason we're getting into these conversations this week was on the 19th, it was International Men's Day. And their objective is zero male suicide, which is that's a big goal. So we want to be able to talk about this and really discuss where we're going to go with it. So right off the bat, Jason, when you hear the words silent killer, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You were kind of trying to define it. It's, I mean, there's kind of the medical side about, widowmaker, or those kinds of things, and you don't know what's going on inside of you, and then you just die, right? Now, what I think more of is the silent, take a step back. What I think more is the silent killer of what? The body or the soul? And so when you start to say, I mean, are we really living our life, or are we kind of just, you know, letting life do its stuff to us? Because I see a lot of people, go, go to some restaurant sometime or go walk around anywhere. It's just, you're just your head's down, just scrolling, doom scrolling on, your phone, and I don't know, like, looks like it's silent killing to me.
That's a great point, Shaun. First thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of in line with what Jason said there. The idea being that, well, here in Kuala Lumpur, I should be more specific. We spent a week in Georgetown up in Penang and then a week in Ipoh, and they are not so touristy as Kuala Lumpur is. And so we've only been here 3 days now, and I've seen a whole lot of doom scrolling. I mean, more doom scrolling than I care to. And it is kind of soul sucking, man. What I'm seeing on, let me give a specific. So there's parts of Kuala Lumpur that are extremely affluent, and there's a lot of Kuala Lumpur that is not affluent. And irrespective of the socio-economic strata that a person exists in, When someone is trying to sell you something, or someone's trying to get you to do something, or someone's asking something, the moment that the interaction stops, and it may only be a fleeting interaction, bam, they're straight back into their phone as if the world doesn't exist. And that really came sort of clear to me this afternoon. We were down in a basement shopping area just looking for some protein powder, and people are in stalls trying to sell various food items, and they'll briefly glance up to see if you're going to buy something, and the moment that you walk by, peripherally I can see them go straight back into their phone. I don't know how many sales they're making in a day, but I do know they're probably turning 12 hours per day of their life in that stall, that most of it is spent in their phone. And I don't see, and it's going to sound almost tragic to say it, I don't see a way out of a joyful life if you are trapped in the basement of a shopping mall in your phone. I mean, it's double bad almost. And if you're not getting in the mountains, if you're not getting near a river, if you're not getting fresh air, if you're not getting sunlight on your face, if you're not interacting with people in a joyous way, then it could be pretty soul-sucking, I think. So I think it can lead to that silent death, even if we're not talking about the more tragic aspect of suicide.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, you got any thoughts on that?
I'm tracking all that. I mean, it's just back to the same thing, right? I mean, it's like, what are we? You can be alive and still be dead. So the other stuff that's actually, you know, that actually leads to, whether it's suicide or anything else like that, is they're interconnected. I think we're a long ways off from understanding the human brain perfectly, but I think the basics are the 90% solution, and we know what to do. We just have to do it.
That's the real trick, right? Is knowing what to do. I remember hearing a quote a little while ago that was, most men in the world live a life of quiet desperation," and that always stuck in my head. Just in Because for many years I actually did lead a life of quiet desperation. There was, you spend your day waiting for the day to end so that you can try again tomorrow, rather than utilizing the day to move forward. Is there anything that you've
Well, why do you think that is?
why do you think, for me,
Yeah.
the big one for me was the fact that I didn't know where I was going. So it's like an aimless, I had so many options, and I wouldn't say it was overwhelming, but I had no concept of where to go. At least when I was in the army, it was I had a direction. It was pretty easy, You show up to work, you do your stuff, your boss tells you where to go, blah blah blah. It's a junior NCO kind of mentality. And when I got out, I really had no idea what I was going to do, and I had based most of my identity on the military. So that was one of the biggest challenges. And what I was going to ask you is that what have you seen that within, not so much within the Go Ruck movement, but um, with people that are just starting, where they're just kind of, they're not really sure, or are living this quiet desperation? What do you think?
I mean, I think the biggest lie in all of this is the one we tell ourselves about how life's going to sometime be perfect, whether it's tomorrow or a year from now, or it's going to be, just not so messy, and the house is going to be organized, and it's all going to be perfect, and everything is just going to line up magically. And it's just not reality. I think we're all kind of trying to move forward day after day, and you have to take care of the big stuff on that long, messy, windy journey that you're on. And the big stuff is, you know how do you spend your time, how do you spend your resources, and are these on things that you believe in? And if too much of that is in the wrong corner, then you have a problem. And if but it's never going to be 100%. It's not like, oh, I just wake up every day and I do exactly what I want and it's all perfect. I mean, everything and everyone that you love will turn to dust. It's all temporary. It's all going to be gone. And that's going to, you go through years of, maybe you don't lose as much, maybe you have some years or some decades where you lose a lot. And that's a lot to deal with. I don't care how old you are, or how wise you are, how much life you have behind you or in front of you. It's hard. And so, you know, there's the scales. You've got to kind of line them up to get the time that you spend on the things that you believe in to be more than the painful moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, thoughts?
I do. And so Jason just helped me make the point that I'm going to try and make, because he just quickly, not interjected, but he quickly hit you with the, why do you think that is? And it's not too often that that occurs. It's not too often that men will absorb what another person is saying, rapidly formulate the correct question, and then rapidly put it right back at them like, why do you think that is? Not as a challenge, as the correct retort, as it were. And so I think for me, the silent killer is, it's not that a person is being silent, it's that they're not being asked the right questions, or they're not being challenged in these moments where they can simply remain silent. And so when someone says, why do you think that is, as an interrogatory, that should lead to further conversation. That should almost end the silence. That should draw a person into the conversation. I'm going to give you an example that I experienced this afternoon here in Kuala Lumpur in a shopping mall. I sat down for some cheap lunch, cost me about $3.75. And there was a young guy there, almost 33 years old. I just started chatting with him. I looked him in the eye and said, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? And right away got into the meat and potatoes with him. My wife was sitting there for a few minutes, and then she bounced off to do something else, which just left him and I sitting there chatting. And I got right into it with him because I could see it in his eyes that he was in the hurt locker. He's got a 2-year-old kid. He's a commercial diver. He's been diving for 8 years. Just over a year ago, his best friend got killed in a diving accident. Rope got wrapped around him. He got dragged down, and they couldn't decompress him. And the double sad part was the guy that I was talking to was supposed to be on that dive, and this other guy took his place. So he's dealing with all of this, and he's trying to figure it out. I could see that he was super struggling. So I sat there with him for a half an hour and talked it out. And towards the end of the conversation, this is what he said to me. Hey man, I just really want to thank you, because you're the first man I've talked to about any of this in my life. And I said, hang on a sec. You're almost 33 and you've never talked to another man about all of these things that you've just lined up in front of me, because I've asked you all of these questions. He said, and the strange thing is, I don't even know you, and you're a white guy. It's really weird, man. And I said, it's really awesome, bro. That's how the universe lines things up. But I think it's our job, not as strong men or as strong leaders or as any title. I just think it's our job, when we see someone who is being silent, if you can see it in their eyes, then find a way to enter into a conversation easily if you can, but don't give up on the conversation so casually because it's getting a little bit uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for him. It was uncomfortable for me. We were talking about suicide. We were talking about lots of different things. And so I do believe that the silent killer is partially my responsibility if I don't look a guy in the eye and say, why'd you think that is? Just as Jason did.
You got any thoughts on that, Jason?
Yeah, man, that's deep. I started thinking like, man, is it cheap lunch really 375 there? And then it totally morphed into a lot more than that. I mean, look, I think while that is a great way to kind of say that a connected society where people talk to each other the way that, in our idealized minds, people used to talk to each other, in the back of the plane, smoking and joking with what used to be called stewardesses, right? Playing cards and all this stuff, as my grandfathers would describe it. And my grandmother was a stewardess, and people just used to talk. And, I mean, what I keep thinking about is Fight Club. I mean, you're describing Fight Club, right? A single serving friend is oftentimes a much easier person to confide everything in. I think that is really important. What's more important even than that is to set up kind of communities of friendship or fellowship or whatever it might be that are consistent. Because guess what? This problem that surfaced over your 375 lunch, it's gonna come back. And who is someone willing to actually engage. And typically for me, it would be the people that I trust, that I spend time with, or that I go way back with. And so, I mean, physical fitness or working out together or doing something, going for a run or a ruck or whatever it might be. We toss sandbags in my driveway on the weekends. I mean, it goes back to my time in the Army. I mean, that was foundational. It's where kind of the barriers go away. So I think if you want to go more upstream, it's how do you break down barriers that allow people to talk in a consistent fashion, because keeping everything bottled up is certainly not the solution.
Yeah, I could not agree more. The thing I wrote down here actually was holding each other accountable, and to a point, that's what Shaun was doing, was holding this guy accountable to his own thoughts, to his own decisions, to his own beliefs. And I'm wondering, if do you think that being held accountable almost has a negative connotation, like you're doing something wrong, so you have to be held accountable for it, versus really just accountability is, at least from the discussion that I've picked up so far, is the fact that it's just being held, putting your own decisions in front of you, and like,
Well, our society glamorizes the individual at almost all. I mean, go look at the movies, the sports, even on team sports. You know, there's the individual is prized, whether it's Messi or Jordan or whatever. I mean, that's what the media covers, and it's a great story. It's easier to I guess dream about being Jordan making that shot against the Utah Jazz to win his sixth championship than it is to envision yourself, for a million hours with a team of people that ebbs and flows, and you have to kind of fit into all of them and still be great within that context. And the Army is not about the individual at all. And so, you
yeah,
know, just the accountability of, yeah, I mean, it works. It works to say, you need to do this because it's not about you. You need to do this because it's about something bigger than you. And when you solve problems like that, what ends up happening is you solve your own problems much better. It's this weird thing where the more you focus on yourself all day long, I think a lot of people are just in their heads all day long. Me, me, me. And it gets really like, man, I've been through a couple phases in life where that's what it was, and it's exhausting and depressing and all of the above. And so, how do you kind of get out of that is to focus less on me, and that's kind of the Army, which is are these great teams, and then you look at, whether it's, let's call it Michael Jordan, Chicago Bulls, great teams, right?
yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I'm not sure that the journey is all that different to be a great teammate. You first have to be a great individual. So there is that, but then you have to submit to the team, and it just all gets confused now with everyone's a blogger, everyone's got their own account, everyone's got their opinions, which they value greatly, and those worlds are clashing pretty hard all over the place, and it's toxic for people's brains, and that's not very fun. And once you wake up every day and you got a bunch of toxicity floating around swimming around your brain, I should say, it's exhausting.
Exhausting is a great word for that. I like it. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Well, first things first, I got to say that I'm at 60, I'm old enough to have stood up in the big bubble behind the 747 on a Ward Air jet trying to hold my drink with the stewardess and not spill it on her or spill it on me for the entire flight. So I
Yeah.
totally hear what you're saying. While everyone's smoking and joking, I mean, I was right in the mix for sure. I think that you're right. I was probably that guy as well, 2 or 3 times, where I lost sight of my way and I wasn't focused on the larger team around me. I was just trying to find out who I was. And I think that maybe part of life is this ebb and flow of you got to figure yourself out, and then you got to figure yourself out in the team, and then you got to figure yourself out, and then you got to figure yourself out in the team. Maybe there's a couple of iterations there where you can kind of nail it, for me anyway, where you got to kind of nail it down and figure out eventually that there's no point in doing the loop over and over again. The I don't want to be too glib with it, but the higher calling or just trying to be of more service actually serves yourself by serving others. And I generally speaking, that's kind of why we started the collective, was to try to serve our fellow man, or focus on human betterment by having rad guests on who've got a lot more wisdom than Chance and I do, and have these conversations so that we gain from it, but also our guests, our demographic gains from it, because we're not making any money from it. We're not selling T-shirts for it. We're just genuinely trying to volunteer our time while just trying to make the world around us a better place. And I think now we're coming up on around 325 podcasts so far this year, and the evolution of, just for myself, I feel like I'm a better man for it. But I know that some of the people around me have benefited from me doing this, and so I think that it doesn't have to be binary where it's all about me or it's all about the team. Just as you said, Jason, by focusing on a bigger group, you tend to gain from it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I have a couple comments here, and then I have a question for you guys, but I just want to hit on these real quick before we keep going. He says, Salty jumps in. He says, I think it's along the lines of, you fall to your own apathy if you don't pick a direction and build the skills and capabilities to support that greater goal, which I really like the idea of falling to your own apathy. That's a great line. He carries on and says, that's what leads us to the building up of all things, the things that lead to self-isolation and loss of community, brotherhood in general. And then he carries on with, it's not just holding people accountable. It's about being able to express your trials and tasks in a way that lets people know that they're not alone. Which leads into my question, is that finding a team, like with the military, it's pretty easy, right? You get assigned your team. There's no, you don't have to find it at all. But once you leave the military, or people that have never been in service, finding that team is a challenge. That's not an easy thing for a lot of people to do. Um, and I say that in terms of me.
I think it is actually.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
How,
I mean,
how do you figure?
okay, so what do you like to do? Give me 3 things you like to do.
I like to do jujitsu. I like to throw my ruck on and go for long walks, and I really like to hunt.
Okay. Do you know anybody else that likes to do those things?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So how do you define a team again?
I would define a team as a group of people working towards one goal in general.
A group, or two or more, whatever it might be, right? Battle buddy. You plus one is a team. That's a fire team where I came from, right? You know, when you must. And so if you have a bias for inactivity, you will sit and wonder about what you could be doing with your life. If you have a bias for activity in your life, you will be doing it. If in that bias for activity, you call up people or you invite them, you say, "Hey, I like to go hunt. You want to come with me? Hey, I like to go for ruck. You want to have a ruck and talk? However you want. Hey, you like jujitsu? Hey, you want to roll sometime? I mean, or we were talking about it before this. You have your community that you roll with, and if you want to, you go there. You say, okay, well, these people are here. I'm part of this tribe, this community, this team, whatever it might be. Now, if you start to spend more time with some of them doing maybe some other stuff, to include sitting across the table from them kneecap to kneecap, talking about your lives over, I don't know, something that you're already going to do, like eat lunch or dinner or any of those things, like, you've got it. This is not hard. And the idea of selling it is hard is everyone just kind of goes, yeah, it's just not hard. It's just becoming abnormal for people to invite other people to go do stuff, or and sometimes if somebody doesn't show up, it's not like someone just shot your puppy, man. I mean, sometimes people got a conflict and you say, hey, you want to go try a different time? Well, what works, and if you're like, so is it hard? I mean, bias for activity, bias for inactivity. If you say, hey, I'm going to be a lot more active and I'm going to invite people to go do stuff, or I'm going to show up, if you say, okay, well, I don't know anybody to invite. Okay, so you can take all of this from a lot of angles. I don't know anybody to invite. Okay, cool. What do you like to do? Right? Do more of that. Now, if other people are ever involved, then do that with other people. And if you kind of are doing stuff, my sense is you're generally happier. your body generally feels better, your brain generally feels better. And so when you sort of take the health pyramid, imagine the old school food pyramid, and you say, okay, at the bottom is physical health. Okay, walking, push-ups, sit-ups, whatever you want to do, rucking, running, I don't care, yoga, pickleball, take your pick, right? Physical health, do enough so that you physically feel good. Top of the pyramid, mental health. Okay, mental, emotional, spiritual health. It's all up in that coconut that you got above your shoulders. And too often we kind of isolate and say, okay, I got to focus on my mental health. Like the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, I saw you've got the little disclaimer at the bottom, right? About, these are our opinions and go do your own research. Sure. Got it. Right. The worst thing you can do for your mental health is to sit in a room and think about your mental health all day. It's terrible. It's toxic. They're all swimming around in you're swimming around in your coconut full of those terrible toxins. Now, if you go out and you just do stuff, whatever you can, then all of a sudden you've got this healthier baseline. My physical health is good. Now, in the middle between physical health at the bottom and mental health at the top is social health. So if you start to involve and have this bias for activity and you do it with other people, now you're leading a very fulfilling life. And I don't care what your job is or your job title, or I don't care how much money you make. None of that stuff matters. The riches that you can get out of doing and leading a life like that with a bias for activity are immense.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's like listening to a smarter, younger version of what I try to say. Holy moly, that's perfectly said, and I completely agree. And I think
And
really the
better
crux of
looking
the
too.
dude, totally better looking. I mean, look at the head on you. I'm sure your wife would agree. So I think that the real crux of the matter is, as Jason stated, and it can't be overstated, it is the lack of action and it is the overthought. Spending days thinking about doing instead of just simply doing. And I think that's where, people lose their way, is too much in their head and not enough in their running shoes, or too much in their head and not enough time on a yoga mat, too much in their head and not enough time kicking a can down the street. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You've just got to do rather than think about do. And so, Jason, I'm curious, and again, to your other point, it's super duper easy to find a team. I mean, it's so easy, it's embarrassingly easy. So we don't even have to touch on that point. But now I'm curious, do you have any wisdom or any pro tips or any, 3 bullet points or whatever the case is that you like to spit out for people who are all up in their melons and not enough in their running shoes?
Oh, 1, 2, 3 life hacks, huh?
Ah, well,
You know, yeah,
you do your
no, I
thing,
get
but
it.
it doesn't have to be life hacks
Yeah,
for
no, I
sure.
mean, it's just the more. I'll give you an example. I'll kind of flank this question a little bit. So if somebody is not in a good place, right? And imagine a world where, just hypothetically speaking, they come to you and they're like, "Hey, I'm not in a good place. What should I do?" Well, 100 times out of 100, if you, I'll pick rucking because I know it well and I do it often. If we say, okay, so don't feel good. Okay, let's measure that. Just take thing on a one is what 1 is good, 10 is bad. I'm a 8, let's say. And then you say, okay, so how about this? Put 30 pounds on your back, and I'll see you in an hour. I don't care how fast you walk. I don't care where you go. Just go outside and put some weight on your back and come back in an hour. And you come back and it's like, okay, I'm a 7. It's like, okay, well, let's do it again, right? And if you do it again, or you do some push-ups or whatever, I mean, I'm reluctant to just sit and say, look, push-ups are the answer, rucking is the answer. But what it does build to, though, is you will sleep better that night. And a lot of times when you're inside of your own head, the hardest thing to do is to sleep. And the best medicine for sleep is exhaustion. And so if you can get yourself to exhaustion to where you sleep well at night, you will actually rest your brain. You will rest this head that you're spending all this time worried about, right? you will actually rest it, and you will wake up and you will feel better if you treat it with exhaustion at night and you sleep. So the day cycle is, this is not something that you can solve immediately, you know, because it's not like, oh, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be perfect. It's more an incremental thing. If you want to gain weight and get stronger, great. It's going to take a little bit. If you need to lose weight and get skinnier, but don't get weaker, right? Then, that's going to take a little bit of time. You got to cut yourself some grace in that process. So there's a very nuanced part of this, but ultimately, I think a lot about I think a lot about sleep, and I think a little bit less about activity on its own. I think you could make the counter argument as well, that you could focus on just activity, but if I don't sleep well, I don't feel well the next day, and then I don't behave as well as I would like, I guess, or I don't think as well as I would like, or I'm not as kind to others. And you see this in all sorts of army training. You see this in your daily life. You see this all over the place. If you don't sleep well or you don't rest enough, you don't act like the best version of yourself. So start with something. Start with one of those. Get to exhaustion, and if you keep doing that for a period of time, you will sleep better. Or you focus on sleep and you say, I need to, get to a point where I'm sleeping better. Either way, you're going to kind of end up in the same universe. It's just, where do you want to focus? And so, you know, I don't drink. It's small stuff. You want your life hacks. Like I don't drink caffeine after morning coffee, basically ever. Um, Alcohol is kind of a big one, right? If I drink too much or too late in the day, it's bad, right? I don't sleep as well. Now, I have some weird gene. I can process it better than some, right? It's not a negative, debilitating thing. It probably has been at a period when I was transitioning out of the army, because you're just like swimming in your own head. There you are, bottle of whiskey and a dog and a bad country song is your like theme song. You're waking up to that every day, and it gets sadder every day, and that's not a good place to be. And what helped fix me was I had a dog that needed to go out. And then he needed more exercise. He would literally bark at me like, "Hey, no, we're not done here. We need to go a little bit more." And that was very therapeutic. So, your fire team can even be just you plus a dog. It is not hard.
I really like this a lot. This is why I like where we're rolling with this. And I have a question on that. Is there a point where you could say, not use too much activity, but because I don't think that really exists, but do you think that you could proxy some larger issues through activity that could end up being negative? Like if you were struggling with um, really any of the mental health disorders, I've been talking like depression, anxiety, all these things. Do you think that there's a point where you would be not dealing with your issues by
Okay,
proxy? You
yeah.
know what I
So I
mean?
think that's a fringe case, though, right? And so what I don't want to do is give some out to somebody who's listening to this. It's like, oh, this could be bad, so I don't want to do anything. It's kind of like anything you do anymore. There's some asshole out there. It's like, oh, that could be really bad for this. Like, if you walk too much, it could be really bad for your knees. Like, come on, man. You know, like it's just so out of context. So that said, I understand the spirit of your question, I think, which will say, you get all these people that are like, oh, you got to do all this hard stuff, right? And so what people that are prone to doing hard things do is they sit and say, yeah, I need to train for my next 50 miler. And then when you do your 50 miler, like, well, that's not enough. I got to do a 75 miler. And then that's not enough. I got to do a 100 miler. And then it's like, I'm just going to walk the earth, and like Cain and Kung Fu. And so the question becomes, that stops being hard at a certain point. What's actually hard? Just because the world says that doing a 50 miler is hard doesn't mean that it's actually hard for you. Like what's going to add the most value to your life? And what I found is that a lot of times we can replace having a hard conversation with some faux hard goal, when what we really need to do is tell the person that we love them, and that this is where I am in life, and then we need to ask them how they're doing, and we need to have a real conversation. Sometimes that's really hard. I'm guilty as charged, officer, you know? And so I think step one is to just kind of view it like that, as I know I'm good at doing these kinds of hard things, and I know I'm not as good at doing these kinds of hard things. Because man, on my team, I mean, feelings come in many forms: 5.56, 9 mil, 50 cal. They come in the form of running and rucking, and how much you can bench and deadlift and squat. Those are called feelings on a special forces team, and I'm okay at those. you know Feelings as a manifestation of how you actually feel. Now, that those are aliens, and I'm still getting acquainted with with a lot of those. And so everyone's got their things that they're good at. And I think that we can celebrate people who find what they're good at, and then, like, learn from things that other people are good at and take some of those back with us. Like, you guys had Emily on. She's the greatest guest you've ever had. I'm positive of that. And she she makes me a better person because she pushes me in a lot of the ways that I'm not good at. And that's a gift. And so you have this kind of, if you want to be part of this team, right? The the marriage team, and I do, then that requires some elements that are not learned on a special forces team. So we're all back to, the we're all back to the fundamentals of what we need to do to have the most enriched and rewarding life. And there's no textbook for it. There's no perfect blueprint for it. You have to kind of learn as you go, and you have to find great people and spend time with them. And then it's a give take.
You're trying to tell me there's no one size fits all thing that we can just give the answer to the universe to people? Come on now. Yeah,
No, but
Sean.
there are lots of things you can baseline a enormous percentage of how to lead a healthy and rewarding life. And it's what do you like to do? Do more of that. Be physically active. Find other people that like to do what you like to do, and do more of that with them. Spend time with people that you love, and ask them how they're doing, and share how you're doing as well, which sometimes it's easy for people to ask and it's hard to share. Sometimes it's the converse. I mean, everybody's a little different, but ultimately on your deathbed, if that's the way that you go out, you're going to think about the people that you loved and the time that you spent with them. You're not going to think about, I don't know, whatever the minor stressors are, or the job title, or this much money versus this much money. It's not something that's going to really matter. So how you spend your time now, and your money now, if you will, your resources now, um, you're making a down payment in the life that you want.
Abs-
And if you do it correctly, you're enjoying it along the way as well.
Absolutely. Sean, come back to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with Jason, man, like 100% with Jason. And I think that, to make my point, that's how I ended up doing 30, 24-hour solo mountain bike races, which is redonkulous. It's not that common. But eventually, you get used to it. And then you start pursuing higher goals, which is I wanted to be a world champion, at which I checked off the box. And then you just keep going. The abnormal becomes normal. And then my job is to keep pursuing the abnormal. That's the way I've run my life. That's what makes me happy. And also, to Jason's point, like when I was in Tier 1, I was taught to do a bunch of things, but what I wasn't taught to do was sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya and hold hands. It's just not what I was taught. It's more lethal to me than ducking bullets. So I think that my wife is probably a little bit of a savior of mine, in the sense of all the stuff that I'm not good at, she's really good at. And she kind of squares me up in the areas that I'm not as strong at. And so she kind of props me up in all of these, matters of sensitivity, which I've never been particularly good at, but I'm trying to get better at. And so I've learned more from her than she's learned from me. And I think that's, to Jason's point, that's key. It doesn't matter what you choose in life. It doesn't matter what you're good at. Go start doing that, and also do some of the things that you're really crappy at. And if you can't do it by yourself, then go find a partner, or go find a team, a ruck buddy, whatever the case is. Get involved with someone who can fill the gaps that you suck at, because everyone's got something that they're going to be good at, and everyone's got something that they're like lame at. So figure it out and hook up with someone who can prop you up a little bit.
Yeah, now I have just a quick question on this. Is that you mentioned earlier, Jason, the you do hard things, and then you look for that next hard thing, and that next hard thing, and that can become a bit of a depending on what is hard. Shaun called me out on this a little while ago. I was I'd been doing jujitsu for 5 6 years at that point, and or 4 or 5 years anyway. Uh, and he was like, I was like, yeah, I do hard things. I go to jujitsu regularly. I put myself in that position. It's not great. And he's like, but you've been doing it for years, so it's not hard anymore, right? That's it. That's your norm. So where do we? I guess how do we get people to realize that that is a norm? If they do,
I don't know, that routine as it might be a norm, but I think there's it's great to dedicate yourself to something and truly push towards a mastery of that. It's just I think to kind of bridge that is it's also good to find humility. I think you find a lot of humility on the jujitsu mat, no matter where you are. It's about who you're rolling with. And so you can also get that from trying new things. And, it's like Emily she started surfing a few years ago and started from not knowing how to surf at all. And it's been really inspiring to watch her. I mean, she's a really, really good athlete growing up. She's good at everything. And but to start from I can't stand up on a surfboard to now she's doing great. It's there that's a lot of journey that you have to go through. So look, you know, I think it's important to maintain humility. And I think that no matter who you are, if you surround yourself with people that don't keep you in check, it will go off the rails. So you have to have something or some community or some way of staying humble. Like, I suck at this. You have to remind yourself. You have to. There's something that's good about that. Now, if you're struggling in life, don't go find more humility, right? I mean, go find some activity to baseline something. So it's kind of about where you are in life, and maybe it would be fun for you uh, to kind of try something new, or I mean, and other times in life, it's like you have to dedicate yourself to what you're doing. I mean, right now in my life is I got a family and I got a full-time job and then some. And I don't say yes to many things outside of that. Like it's just running through this, the exploration of go try this and go, this new thing. Then it's going to take all this time. I'm more focused and concentrated on those two things in my life. And so, but there are some other things that I would like to do, down the line. Like, I'm not going to open a woodworking shop or something in my garage because I'm really bad at that, but maybe I'll learn it. Who knows, right? But it would be fun to do that. And right now, the timing's bad for me, so it's kind of we can all cut ourselves a little bit of grace in that process too. I think the bigger thing to come back to your example about, well, you're used to that, is it still serving the value that you need out of your life? Are you still in some, are you enjoying the journey? Is it, or enjoyment can be the wrong word, is it a rewarding path that you're on? And if not, then you can kind of lead a self-examined life and try to figure out why not, or try to find some different or additional inputs into your life in the form of other people or other stimuli or whatever it might be. And there's no harm in that.
I really like the word rewarding. That's a great word for it. Shaun, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, just for the record, I think I said go find something that makes you uncomfortable, like tie on a new white belt in a new
Yes, you're right.
thing. And let's call it woodworking, to Jason's point, or let's call it starting a live chat podcast every single day of the year. Something that like is super duper uncomfortable, that you're not only facing some adversity, but you're learning more about yourself internally and the larger world wrapped around you. So it's less about whether you can smash on the BJJ mats or not. I've been smashing for 8 years and I'm reasonably comfortable, but I need to tie white belts on in some things every once in a while that make me feel like I need to grow into a different version of myself. Not like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but, just challenge myself with a new trajectory that makes me feel uncomfortable.
I I'm actually, Jason, you got any other thoughts on that? Because I want to come back to a point that you made a little bit earlier, but just
Go
give
ahead.
you a chance. Okay, so I like the idea you were talking about sleep being like a cornerstone, and if you are having trouble sleeping, activity is a great thing, and it brought to mind the concept of forced rest and creating a position in your life that you are required to rest, like physically rest. And I mean, we all know what forced rest is, but for those that don't, it within the military there are points in time where you have to get people to sleep. You can't, or not just sleep, but actually like rest for a period of time prior a to an operation or prior to going outside the wire doing whatever. Um, and I'm wondering, do you think that that's something that should be applied into uh, everyday life? Like, work hard, do activity, but then give yourself a period of forced rest. Like, put the phone down, um, rack out when at a particular time, so that it is a period that is just for you. What do you think?
I mean, I think I missed that class in the Army. There was sort of a bravado around how little sleep you got and how little sleep you needed in order to still function. And I think it's exhaustion was the only thing that any ever got it. I mean, sure, there was different sleep cycles when we were deployed and all of that stuff. I mean, it's baked in, but there's a lot of stimulants, call it caffeine or call it dip or call it whatever it might be to kind of keep you're up and then you're down and you're up and you're down. You have radio watch. It's however many hours overnight. I remember just we had a small little gym down there and radio watch and all I'm doing is just, pumping iron, getting jacked and stuff, right? And you've got, protein powder all over the place. Anyway, I could digress into that type of thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't like the idea of forced anything to my ears anyway. I hear that, I'm like, "Ooh, that doesn't don't tell me what to do," you know? Sort of turning into that mode. I just go back to exhaustion is the best medicine, and if you have that, it'll kind of take care of itself over the long haul. Now, day 1 is this, day 2 is this. It can ebb and flow with anything, but exhaustion is sort of the best for me. And yes, if you could come in and you could say, okay, so from this time to this time, you need to, shut your phone off and you need to sit and meditate in a cold, dark room, and then you need to journal and then you need to do all this stuff. It can turn a bit too prescriptive, or you need to work on your breath stuff. By the way, all this stuff I find super interesting. So all the woo-woo stuff, I think there's a piece of that I really enjoy kind of exploring. I didn't grow up around it and I haven't, turned it into I don't have a 97 step morning or anything. And it's kind of just try to get the big stuff right and work around it.
I like it. I like that. Sean, thoughts?
Precisely how I feel. That is exactly how I feel. Don't ever tell me what I'm supposed to do, and don't ever tell me what I can't do, because I'll do quite the opposite. And so if someone puts force rest on me, forget about it. I'm going to double down. But that's the way I am, because I know myself, that's the way I am, and I'm good with that. But not everyone's like me. Not everyone's like Jason. There's a bunch of us that are like this, but there's a whole pile of other people that aren't. And so I'm just going to use a great example, a realistic example from today. I'm not sure my wife will be too keen to that I'll be throwing this out, but the hotel that we're staying in, she put her yogurt in the fridge overnight and then had some yogurt before she went for a morning run this morning. And she's got a little bit of GI tract challenge right now because the fridge was too warm. And so she's kind of been sitting on the toilet a fair bit today, clearing out her gut. And we've been going pretty hard here in Malaysia for the last 2 weeks, hot, humid. She's been running a lot, getting ready for the Singapore Marathon coming up here on December 3rd. And so she said, hey, how do you feel about going to see a movie? You can just chillax, let the central nervous system relax a little bit, and cool and watch a movie and just relax. And I said, okay, yeah, let's do that. And it was freaking Hunger Games, man, the new Hunger Games. I don't know, Hunger Games, Snakes and Birds or whatever. I forget the name of the title of the movie. Not my cup of tea at all. And, as I was sitting there watching it, I was like, God, I just want out of here. This is dumb. But while I was sitting there, I was like, okay, well, I got to get a grip on this. And I'd rather do knuckle push-ups all day long than watch that movie. But that's probably the best thing for me, man. It's like tying on a white belt of adversity that I don't want to sit through. It's super uncomfortable. I'd rather be doing a boatload of other things. But, my wife's a tiny bit in the Hurt Locker, so I'm absolutely going to support her. But that movie is probably what I needed to do to just not grit my teeth through it, but just kind of, get right with the moment and figure it out and try to enjoy it, as it were. So I don't like
Yeah,
anyone
how'd that
telling me to
turn out
do
for you?
things. I don't even want to say, but I think the reality is we just, we got to figure these kind of things out so that, every time a challenge comes up, you got to face it head on. And I like to smash the problems. I don't like to kick it back and watch Game of Thrones 97 times. So life is too short to waste on kind of worthless movies like that. But there's a time and place for it. And when you're doing a thing that you don't want to do, you got to find a way to do it and kind of try to enjoy it. So for what it's worth, that's
First off, don't eat yogurt before a run. Second off,
bam,
the right time and place for anything like that is when your wife tells you that that's what you're doing. Those are the
100%.
two. Those are the two
There it
takeaways
is.
from that.
Yeah. Make sure that the fridge is plugged in when you put the yogurt in.
This is, I got a couple comments here that I want to touch on. Very similar. Winterstorm says, "Bladed morning, good to see you, buddy." And then Salty jumps in and says, "It's a balance, not a time or location." I think this is key. And he says, "Anchor yourself in the actions, but allow for flow to get them in." And this is again critical. I think in my mind is that, as you said earlier, Jason, if you let things get dogmatic, then it becomes a bit of an issue. Whereas, if you ruck every day at a particular time, no matter what happens, that is a good thing. Build consistency. But there's a point where you need to kind of let that go and let it flow a bit, so that you can maybe do it in the morning, maybe do it in the evening, maybe do it in the afternoon, but you're still getting it in. Do you think that's an important concept? Is to be able to
I think
allow
it's about the
for.
totality of your how you dealing with life. I mean, I don't want to talk people out of going to the same CrossFit class every day at the same time. Some people need structure and routine, and that's fine. I mean, PT for us started at a specific time in the Army, and it helped every single person that did it sleep better that night. And so, yeah, there's a fluidity to it, and that's fine. I mean, if this were not a live recording and we were just chatting, I'd probably have 45 pounds on my back and be walking around the neighborhood, and that works for me, and I get that in when I can. That's kind of different than, I'm not looking for a lot of personal growth out of 45 pounds on my back outside taking phone calls. I'm looking for a baseline of physical health and activity that's going to help me have I will sleep better. If I sleep better, I'll feel better tomorrow. And I will be a kinder, better version of myself than if I stay up all night and, pretend like I can eat nails and just keep going. So growth happens on the fringes, but we still need to baseline that health pyramid with physical activity. We're animals, and animals need exercise. We know this about kids, we know this about dogs, and we forget it about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, you got any points to add on that?
Nope. I've got absolutely nothing to add to that. That's 100% legit.
Right on. Well, I don't have a whole lot of other questions here. I do appreciate the conversation. It has been really fantastic. We're actually almost at time here too, so that was surprising. That hour went by fast. um, I have just a quick. Are there any final thoughts on anything at all that we've gone over so far, on dealing with, I guess, the silent killer of quiet desperation? Jason, anything still bubbling up in the back of your brain?
Do more, think less, invite people along for the journey.
Bam. Brevity. I like it. Shaun, any final thoughts?
×2.
There we go. Doubling down on the brevity. I like it. Well, again, I really do appreciate the conversation. This has been awesome. I think that I know for myself, the one thing I picked up out of this is that I need to get out more. And I'm going to start today. So it's going to be great. So I hope for everybody that's
So what are you
watching.
going to do today?
I'm going to go.
Good man.
This is good. Yeah, good. Hold me accountable. I'm going to go for a walk today. I got a broken toe, but I'm going to go for a long walk and see how far. I don't even know how far I'm going to go, but I'm just going to get out there and start walking.
How long, like what would be the minimum amount of time or distance that you would go on your long walk for?
I would say at least an hour.
Okay,
If not more.
that's good. Outside?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. How many times this week do you think you'll do that?
Well, right now, I'm going to do it today, and tomorrow I'm going to see what happens.
Okay, take it day by day, huh?
Yeah. Well, I got.
Dude, you're making my life so good right now. You're making my life so easy right now. This is literally what I do with Chance every week. Dude, you are the man. This is awesome.
I'm a day-to-day kind of dude right now, but
How many push-ups can you do in 2 minutes?
In 2 minutes, I haven't even tried in a while, but I would say not
Dude,
many.
Jason, come back. For all things good in the world, come back again, please.
Yeah.
This is great. I love it. I'm thinking about it in 2 minutes. I don't know. I'd probably be around 50 or 60. Probably not much.
Maybe 90 or 100, but until you do it, you'll never know.
Bam! Dude, you've got to come back. This is killer.
I got to separate.
I know this playbook, man.
Dude, all day long. This is my playbook as well. All day long. I love it.
I got lots of excuses, but that doesn't stop me from doing the things that I really want to do. And I'm still doing jiu-jitsu. I'm still being active. I'm still keeping my kids moving around. I just don't have the extra stuff. I don't have a direction on it. So I just do it when I want to, or when I don't want to.
Yeah, so the best thing you could do, honestly, because I dirty little secret, I love to put weight on my back, or to hike, or to walk, or to explore cities, or bike around cities, or whatever the case may be. I just love that type of movement and activity. I don't enjoy time in a gym. I don't enjoy lifting weights. I don't enjoy any of that. But I work out in my driveways on the weekends because everybody shows up. And, it's like 30 minutes of pushing sandbags around. And then, at the end of it, we drink a couple beers and talk about our lives. It's great, right? Sometimes it's an hour, and we do that Saturday and Sunday. Occasionally other stuff will pop up, but you need a battle buddy, man. So all these questions you're asking, like, you need to kind of put it into action. And, all these other things that you got in your life. I mean, people always lead with this idea, because I get it a lot. It's like, oh, you must be so busy. And I don't know. I feel like that is about the laziest thing that anybody could say to any other person, right? Because if they say, yeah, I'm so busy, right? Like, is that supposed to make me think that that's a good thing or a bad thing? Because I don't view my life in terms of, oh, I'm so busy, right? Imagine when you start to walk around with that in your head, like, I'm so busy. Well, then you have kids, and your kids start to pick up on that. You're like, man, my dad, he's really busy, right? And then they're 25 and they're in therapy, and they're like, man, my dad was just always really busy, And so you get into this world of, you can make the time for whatever you want to make the time for. If you don't like to do it, but it's good, jiu-jitsu is a great thing, man. And it's awesome that you're rolling. If there's another way to do stuff with other people, that's fun too, right? If it's go for a walk, or bike outside. I mean, the only downside really to jiu-jitsu is it's indoors. So you would love to see something outside that's kind of baked into a calendar, which I'm obviously slave to, since Emily was like, oh, how did that all, like, Emily just put on my calendar. Like, that's the easiest way to get me to show up to something, right? And you can be right, or you can be married, and I choose to be married. So of course she has full access to my calendar to do with as she sees fit, But it's like, put something to where you just got a buddy, and if they have to miss a week, that's okay. If you have to miss a week, that's okay. But it's kind of there and you enjoy the time with that person and you happen to be doing, you fill in the blank. That's the fun part. It doesn't really matter what you're doing, but you can do something that is accessible and fun for both of you.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for the
Dude,
conversation. This has been
legendary.
awesome. Right?
Freaking legendary.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Enjoy your hour-long walk today, and take it
And
as
tomorrow.
it comes, tomorrow, and
you know what? You bring this up. It's a great point. Is that for many years I thought that being busy was like it was a requirement. Like you just had to stay busy doing stuff, and so I would fill my time being busy, versus utilizing my time to be moving rather than just being busy for the sake of being busy. And I used to get number of people would tell me, "Why are you so busy all the time?" And I'd just be like, "Well, I have lots to do." But
you probably viewed that as some type of validation of the badge that you were carrying around on
absolutely.
your chest, right? Like,
100%.
I'm busy, I'm strong. You're not busy, you're weak.
Yeah.
BS like that, right?
Oh yeah,
100%.
To try to be more intentional with your time is that's a mark of some wisdom that I think is a worthwhile endeavor to examine in all of our lives.
Absolutely. It is something that we should all strive to learn. I think it's something we should all build upon every day, and then you can continue to grow as a human being every day. And you can do that with us here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Chimo.
freaking legendary.